My name is Monique Gaston, Education Pillar, and this is the Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation.
GAGDC. We serve our community. We are GAGDC. Revitalize our neighborhoods. Development is educate our youth. GAGDC. Dang, what else do they do at GAGDC? Promote and provide health and wellness, please. Come through, check us out at GAGDC.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely coming through.
So, welcome, Mr. Thomas Sleek. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the artwork that you do?
Yeah, my name's Thomas Sleet. I'm a sculptor based in St. Louis. My primary work that I do is with recycled materials, reclaimed materials that I rescue from dumps, from derelict buildings, open lots. I go to metal scrap yards, etc., and I try and bring those materials back to life.
All right. So we did see that when we researched you, and
Right.
so can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with Adinkra symbols?
Okay, so my relationship with Adinkra symbols goes back probably 20 or 25 years. So I was first attracted to Adinkra symbols when I went to the Chicago Art Institute, and I was went to the African art section, which was in the lower level of the gallery of the museum, and after going through the entire museum, like spending a whole day there, I felt like I needed to see some African art, and we went and found it in the lower level. And so when I was looking at these pieces, and my college training, my classical art training, had always sort of codified African art as being primitive and unsophisticated. And this day, after looking at European art all day long, and then going to the lower level, it was like the work jumped out of the case and grabbed me, and it just made me feel something that I didn't feel looking at the other art in the museum. So that was my first sort of like being, I guess, spiritually struck by African art. And the Adinkra symbols is just a transition, if you will, or development from that moment when I was struck by the African art.
Okay. So, what inspired the original piece in St. Louis?
In St. Louis, the Adinkra Tower at the bus terminal in St. Louis.
How did it come to be?
So the Bi-State Development Agency, which has a program called Arts in Transit, they commission like 2 or 3 artists a year to do sculptures for their train and bus terminals. So I guess it was maybe in 2014, 2015, they asked me to submit a proposal for one of those commissions. And I went out and visited the site. It was on the edge of the city in a predominantly black neighborhood. And I wanted to do a piece of work that would speak to the people, like in a spiritual way. So that's how I started thinking about using these Adinkra symbols, African symbols, to transmit information or a feeling that I could not get by using just shape and color. So I submitted two proposals. One of them had the Adinkra symbols in it, and the other one was just sort of like abstract shapes and color. And they asked me to do a model of one of them. They didn't care which one I did. So I did a model of the Adinkra one, and they said it's a go, so it just came off like that. And I feel the connection to the Adinkra symbols because I think their messages for our people that are being transmitted from antiquity. Like they don't even have really an age to them.
Oh, that was great. So we were definitely blown away by your original piece, even though on the paper. So how long does it take you to build something like that?
So I've been privileged to be working on I guess you would call them sculptural commissions for the last 10 years, 12 years. And before that, I was like, I'm going to get around to your question, but I'm giving you the preamble to that. So before that, I was, making work in my studio, assembling a body of work. And on the, every 2 or 3 years, I would have a solo exhibit, solo exhibition. And, I'd work, maybe have a body of work, 14, 15 pieces, something like that. And, put on an exhibit and sell one piece, But it was always the hope that every time I did an exhibit, it would sell out. But that was never the case. So about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I was given the opportunity to do a commission. That's another whole world. You know what I'm saying? Because when you do a commission, you're only doing one piece and you're making the amount of money you would make if you was selling 14 or 15 pieces. You understand? So the metrics of doing commissions is much more attractive than doing studio work and hoping people come and buy it. So that's how I got to the point where I forgot what your question was now.
It was how long, but I actually...
How long? So it's still 2 or 3 years per piece, but it works out better for my studio because the effort, the overhead, the assistance, all of that's covered in a commission. Whereas if I'm just doing studio art and selling it, none of it's covered, so 2 to 3 years on average. I'm working on a piece right now for a college that's up in Illinois. I started working on it a year ago, and it's going to be ready in October.
Oh, yeah, you definitely have to share that with us.
Yeah.
And so I know you talked about using salvage or repurposed materials. Can you talk about how you got into that and what's the impact of it?
So first of all, I grew up in the city of St. Louis, and I've always been sort of engaged, enamored with material that's sort of the results of either neglect or desolation or abandonment of some sort. Like when I was a kid, I used to, walk around picking up pretty pieces of glass, from broken bottles. I would collect rocks. I collected little pieces of metal, and, I had what you call a junk drawer. And I had all this stuff in my drawer, and none of it had anything to do with it, with any other piece in the thing. But when you looked at it in aggregate, it was like, all of these little precious broken pieces of stuff. So anyway, I've always been attracted to abandoned materials. And I think another thing that comes into play is that these materials are free. So, in a lot of cases, they're free. So, it gives me the freedom to recreate with these materials without confinement, without restriction. You know, it's like because it's free, I can do something unique and something, unorthodox with it because the material's not like that precious. It's not like going to the art store and spending, $100 for some paper or some canvases, and then he's like, okay, I got to make this count. And the other aspect to it is I appreciate the material itself. And in a lot of ways, I'd let those materials, because I think they've already lived a life in a lot of cases. And I see using salvage materials as an opportunity to give them a new life.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so when you do commission artwork, how do you keep your creative process, but also the vision of the client and not have it compromised?
So the way I address that is I try and imagine what needs to be said with the work. And I don't get bogged down in the sort of the style of aesthetics. Like everybody has some kind of like aesthetic, what would you call it? An aesthetics ruler or some kind of slide rule where they're like, okay, I like the way this looks. I don't like the way that looks. Mm-hmm. So I try and stay as far away from that as I can. I don't even want to like the way it looks myself. I just I wanted to say something without necessarily being pretty. And I don't think about mistreating the material, so it's almost impossible to make something ugly. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't like purposefully do something, what would you call it? Disrespectful with materials. Mm-hmm. I use the kind of, this is going to sound crazy, but I use the sort of guide rule that it was made by the creator. Mm-hmm. So it would be I don't even know what the word is, blasphemous, or it's some kind of weird thing there. I'm not a religious person, but mm-hmm. I just think that you don't mess with what God made. Mm-hmm. Or you don't do it in a disrespectful. I have a very high regard for materials, and in many ways I let the materials dictate to me what to make, how the shape will speak about the material itself. It's like my ideas become secondary to what the material wants itself to say.
Got you. So you let the art speak through you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you visited Chicago many times, but how did that differ when you received a request of visiting GAGDC and the Auburn Gresham community?
So yeah, when I was planning to come up here for my first visit, I was a little bit ambivalent. I didn't know what to expect, so I didn't want to expect anything per se. I just wanted to come up and feel it out and see what you and your organization were about, what you were talking about, your position in the community, and what types of things programs and such that you had. So The first thing that happened when I got here is you took me on a tour of the community, and I think we went to a coffee house around the corner or down the street or something, had some breakfast, and then, and we toured around, saw a bunch of different features of the neighborhood. So at the end of that day, I realized that you guys had integrity, that you were having a positive impact on this community, and I definitely decided this is going to be a good thing, no matter how it turns out. I knew that, we were going to do some artwork, but I didn't know whether it was going to be, of $100,000 or $1,000. But we worked it out, and we got a piece here, which I'm totally grateful for. It's given me a footprint outside of St. Louis.
And so us too. And so our senior director, Ms. Linda Johnson, actually searched Adinkra, just art, symbols, and different things, and yours actually came up. And so she posted it on her cubicle, walking past it, and really just wanted to figure out, more about you, more about, what inspired your piece. And we definitely wanted one, to sit here at home in our healthy lifestyle hub. And so can you tell us about the top piece? Because we didn't talk about that one.
So, yeah. So first, let me say, this process took a little bit over 2 years from conception to completion. And it took us maybe about 8 months just to even come up with the symbols. Miss Gasson, wasn't that you that was coming up with the symbols? So it was a group effort. So 8 months is a long time, but over that 8 months, it gave me time to gestate the piece. While I'm waiting for the symbols to come, I'm imagining what the work is going to look like with any symbols. So when you delivered your 12 symbols, I already had the complete, the complete design and architecture of the piece figured out. So all I had to do was scale your symbols and drop them into those trapezoids. But what I realized is that the piece was going to just have a point at the top, and going back to the previous piece, the one for the bus station, it has sort of like a Jupiter type of planet shape at the top, and I wanted to have some kind of object at the top. So without being, too cerebral about it, I went based on shapes. And so the piece at the top of your Adinkra tablet has like a bean pod, which symbolizes unity. And then it has the double ram's horns, which symbolizes strength. So the symbol at the top of your piece symbolizes unity and strength.
And so I know
and I didn't ask you, could I put it on there?
You did not, and that's what I was like. And so it actually
I thought I'd
was
surprise
perfect.
you.
And you did.
Yeah.
So that piece, that symbol for strength is actually in our concrete when we did do the tour, and so along our 79th corridor. Mm-hmm. And so it was almost ordained that that piece stood on top, as well as our community engagement pillar, Adinkra symbol, mm-hmm. which is this pod.
Mm-hmm, the seed pod.
Mm-hmm. So it really encompassed the work, and I was definitely surprised about that. Yeah. Can you talk about adding in the LED lights and the...
So the LED lights were sort of like a development that took place as I was planning how the piece was going to look. So I could have designed it where it had no lights in it, but then it would be hard to see the symbols without interior lighting. And so I figured it would be appropriate to put lighting in there. And then at that point, I had the choice of putting white light in it, like just like a white light strips in the corners. But then I thought, well, if I'm going to go this far, I may as well make it programmable, because the equipment is not that much more expensive, but it gives you more latitude in terms of what the piece looks like in different settings. So it's got color, it's got solid color, it's got traveling color, and it also has the white.
And
So
thank you for that.
I never talked to you about that either, did I?
didn't.
Okay, well, that's sometimes you got to let the artist surprise you.
And it was a surprise,
Yeah.
and so we definitely love it. And even at the ceremony, naming the piece, and so how you said the art speaks through you, and so adding that top piece that we never spoke about end up being the community's buy-in or the community's vote for the name of that tower, and so we named it the Adinkra Tower of Unity and Strength, based off of that surprise.
Cool.
And so that's actually great for that.
I'm glad I could be of service.
Yes, and we thank you again too for bringing that home here at the Healthy Hub. And so before we end off, just anything that stood out on your visit to Chicago about GAGDC. So you got to be here on our Vendor Fridays. So you've seen a little hustle and bustle of our different vendors in the space. And actually, when you first came, the hub was not even erected just yet.
It wasn't even open.
So coming back and seeing
So what I feel now is that, and I think this piece helps. The Adinkra Tower helps. I feel a sort of a strengthening of the spirit, and I think it's because the piece sort of gives everybody something to sort of have a common feeling about, and I think so much of and this is going to sound crazy, but African community cannot exist without feeling. And when people don't have feeling, then they sort of don't care. And I think this gives people a center or an anchor around which to care. And, I'm glad that I've been a part of it.
Oh, for sure. Look, we thank you, and I'm glad that you said yes to that request. And so, can you tell the people more or where they can find you, and maybe with some things that's coming up next?
So my website is thomasfleetart.com. So you can communicate with me through the email that's embedded in the website. And I'm working on a piece, like I said, for this college in Southern Illinois, south of here. The piece is going to be made out of 680, 700 different eye blocks that I'm making out of reclaimed wood. So the wood that I'm using to make this piece out of is over 100 years old. It came out of buildings that they demolished around St. Louis. And I'm making the 680 eye blocks, and they're going to form a circle/cone. So it'll be like circles of eye blocks that get smaller and smaller and smaller up to the top, and then I'm going to put a slit in there so you'll be able to walk inside of there, so you'll be able to see it from the outside and the inside. And so it'll be like you'll be walking into the body of the work.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be nice. And so definitely can you drop where they can find you at one more time, because I would say we definitely want to stay up to date.
thomasfleetart.com.
Yeah.
tsleet02@gmail.com.
Right. And then, here you can catch the Adinkra Tower of Unity and Strength. And so welcome home to the Healthy Hub. Thank you for bringing that here. And so you always have that piece here as well. But thank you for being a part of that process. And if you had anything else.
That's it.
All right.